welcome Summer Simpson, who is Vice President of Product Management at Quantcast. And she's going to be talking about reversing the Great Divide, empowering diverse voices in media. Now, that's such an important topic, and actually we're going to be having another discussion about diversity and inclusion later on this afternoon with June Sarpong and some special guests. But now, can I turn the floor over to Summer Simpson, please?
Hi, I'm Summer Simpson. I'm the VP of Product at Quantcast. Today, I'm going to talk about digital journalism within the context of the free and open internet and how we got to where we are today. I'm really excited to be at MadFest London, and I hope what I have to say really resonates with you. So first, before we get going, a little bit about me and why I care so deeply about the convergence of digital with the fourth estate, right? So the news and content that serves as a check and balance on our government and our society. It's a critical role. I grew up loving technology. I started coding when I was 11 because there was just something kind of magical about random letters and numbers that could make things happen on a screen. And I also really loved to irritate my sixth grade teacher. So I come from a journalism background. From an early age, I was really obsessed with the idea of the fourth estate. I ran an underground newspaper in high school, launched a musical and arts magazine in college, and then went on to photojournalism school and built my newspaper's first website in 1994. The free and open access to news and information is in my blood, and it really fuels me. And being able to leverage technology to expand and protect the impact of journalism is why I wake up every morning and go to work. But while the internet is a place for the open expression of ideas, let's start by establishing a fundamental truth. So the content that you consume on the internet, the content that people rely on to remain informed, it's paid for by advertising, right? That is the business model. So yes, there's content out there that is subscription based, but that's kind of the exception to the rule. If you look at the majority of the content out there, so the articles we stumble on through the rabbit hole of search and social, news sites who cover everything from global, national, and local news to sports and entertainment that educate and inform us, hobbyist sites, right, that entertain us and help us do it ourselves, and even larger platforms like Facebook that feed our digital social needs, right? All day, every day, all night. They're all available to us because of the ad ecosystem, as tech companies and consumers have created it, right? So let's take a quick walk through history. And for me, it's a kind of a walk down memory lane. Digital journalism did not start in the 90s. The first print content that made it to the internet for people with a computer and a dial-up connection, beating newspapers before their issues were even hot off the presses, was through an experiment that was run by CompuServe and the Associated Press. The Columbus Dispatch was actually the first to provide their content on this service, and then were quickly followed by the New York Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Washington Post, and many others. In the 90s, digital journalism was beginning to take off because of this whole new World Wide Web thing, and faster modems, and a little browser called Netscape. Print media was getting online at lightning speed, and the ease of web publishing increased the proliferation of online digizines like Word, Suck, and Salon. So by the turn of the century, every major print publication was online, and many were already producing net new content that was only available digitally. They were pushing the envelope in terms of leveraging technology to generate and present content to the growing online masses. Now, all this content online made it increasingly difficult to find things unless you knew the web address. Well, Yahoo fixed this with a categorized and curated directory of websites and a new news section that aggregated content from wire services and newspapers everywhere. And Yahoo News became the most emailed page on the web and revolutionized the way that we consume news media, which ushered in a new era of news aggregation. But the world really changed once Google won the search engine race. So starting as a simple tool to navigate the web, it grew to become the official verb of web searches. Google News joined shortly after, launching Google News in beta in 2002 and then officially in 2006. Behind the scenes, there were lawsuits, and there still are, Publishers were worried, as they should have been, and complained that Google was using their content, right? Their headlines, their leads, their photos, without permission and without a way to drive revenue for the content creators. So visits to news sites from Google News became known as Google one-hit wonders, right? So people would click on a link in Google News, they would go, they'd get the gist of the article, they'd bounce and come back. And since single visits don't monetize well, it wasn't much of a win for the publishers. But at the same time, it was hard to turn down an increase in traffic. So lawsuits were lost and dropped, and the World Wide Web just kind of continued to turn. Now we're moving on to the short period from 2005 to 2007. This was a flurry of content production and clicking, and we saw two major areas of rapid growth. So first off, blogs had been around since the late 90s on platforms like LiveJournal and Blogger, but didn't really take off until WordPress caught on with the masses in 2005. It was a format that allowed anyone to sign up a website and post content on a regular basis. Bloggers began to take on news stories, and while some were former newspaper journalists, many more were just, fans, experts on different topics, or just regular Joes. And this kind of resulted in a lot of injection of their personal beliefs into their news stories. And without the journalism norms of things like fact-checking and multiple editorial reviews and multiple sources, we began to see the proliferation of content that used to be mostly reserved for the op-ed pages. So like everything else in life, bad sometimes comes with the good. With the ease of creating generalized or republished content, combined with the ease of monetizing it, a new wave of sites emerged. Their superpowers were search and social, leveraging SEO, social sharing to drive traffic to their sites, and constructing headlines paired with images that drove engagement through the roof. Websites like the Huffington Post and BuzzFeed were launched, and they kind of perfected this attention-grabbing content presentation, and basically the proverbial rabbit hole came along with that. This was all well and good until tech figured out how to turn traffic into cash, right? So encouraging this trend were tech companies like Taboola and Outbrain, who created widgets displaying similar content from kind of questionable sources that other content producers could add to their own sites as ad units. And we lovingly referred to these as chumbox ads. Creating yet another monetization strategy, but one that encouraged, mostly bad habits, right? People would click these article links and suddenly find themselves on an unrecognizable website, clicking through page after page after page, wondering, if they'd ever get to a point or learn, what did Perez Hilton do this week? During the same period, social was on the rise. As a major fan of tribe.net and a frequent kind of complainer about MySpace, I can firmly state that Facebook was not the first social network, but it did emerge as the victor. In 2006, Facebook opened its doors to anyone 13 years or older with an email address, enabling thousands of people in the US to join a user base of what had been just college students. And they could come in and create their own social networks through friend invites and pet and kid posts. And a key piece of this was the launch of the Facebook newsfeed. And this created a stream of content that was shareable, right? An addictive stream of content that was shareable. But a quickly growing software company needs to monetize to pay the bills. And what better way to grow revenue than to tap into all that social profile data and make it available for advertisers to target consumers directly, knowing exactly who people are and what they like. So in 2007, Facebook Ads was launched and the first ads appeared in our news feeds. Facebook hit a major milestone just 3 years later, reaching the 500 million user mark. That's 500 million people spending more and more time every day, now on their smartphones, reading friend updates and sharing content on the newsfeed. And that's 500 million people now also seeing ads in that newsfeed. That's bank. So Facebook got the world in the EU's attention in 2013 with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And this basically exposed the social data of 87 million Facebook users. Now, Facebook was not the only tech giant under the microscope of privacy advocates and regulators. But this confirmed to regulators that GDPR and privacy regulation was the right thing to do. But this is a story for another day. This is a rat hole for another day. But I want to let's get back to the content. So the whole point of the social thread in this particular story is really one of social bubbles. The more time people spent on Facebook getting their news and information, the more time they spent surrounded by people that they like and agree with, separating them from alternative views and the reality outside of the walled garden. I think many of you have seen this image of media bias, basically showing where each media outlet falls on the spectrum between conservative and liberal, and however you place people in between. This was all fueled by the fast-growing internet economy and the tech factor that spurred that exponential growth. So people find comfort in their own echo chamber, right? Confirming what they already believe. It's our comfort zones. So no matter where we fall on this spectrum and how hard we try to stick to the middle, there are moments we all honestly fall prey to this because we want to we hear what we think, right, and have it confirmed for us. But in all of this, the real news sources, the sources of quality journalism, have been getting squeezed and squeezed. You know, all that marketing spend, $129 billion in 2019 in the US alone, is now mostly going to the search and social tech giants, with the remainder spread across this graph and the tech that powers the digital advertising ecosystem sitting between these logos and the marketers who hold the dollars. This leaves the producers of the quality content and journalism with very little left to actually run the business that produces the content we consume every day. So we're basically hurting the source of the content that we want, that is the source of the monetization. Now, add in privacy law requirements, the impending death of the third-party cookie, and you've kind of got a recipe for further control by the tech giants over the content. And not just the content, the revenue and the futures of these logos, regardless of what side that they fall on. Now we're in a place where the news is frankly as divided as our political parties, or maybe it's that our political parties are as divided as our news, right? Where it comes from. People live in protected information bubbles, only hearing the information they and their friends typically agree with. Facebook and Google are further cutting publishers out or controlling the flow of ad dollars around the publisher content. And big tech, with their history of questionable data and privacy practices that have made major headlines over the past 10 years, are being sought after by governments globally. But GDPR and other privacy laws that were intended as a means to ensnare the big fish and hold them accountable has instead been a widely cast net that has ensnared all of us. So what now, right? Are we so divided that we're stuck in these bubbles forever? Will the death of third-party cookies drive us back to the monetization strategies of 1999? I was there. And, honestly, the advertising experience for everyone, marketers, publishers, consumers, back in 1999 was really awful. We thought it was great, but it was really awful. I'm not sure if the Google cookie delay is a much needed reprieve or an indication that things are going to get more complicated. We don't know. So are we doomed, right? Absolutely not. You know what? We learn from the past and we create a new future, one that is privacy centric and rewards quality digital journalism, rewards the people producing the content that we consume. As Quantcast's VP of product, I feel I'm in a position to promote positive change for this industry that I care about so deeply. The last few years, I have been able to work on the Quantcast platform, which enables brands to adapt to ever-changing consumer behavior and drive growth for their business. Integral to this is ease of use and efficacy in a single platform. And it's tools like these that empower brands to focus not just on performance, but focus on their strategy and their brand integrity, right? That's the critical piece. And with the right tools, marketers can go even further. Ideally, they should be demanding transparency across the ecosystem for their marketing spend, right? Speaking to marketers directly, put down the brand safety hammers that you use today and find more precise tools to achieve your goals. They're out there, right? And then that stops blocking the tons of content that these news companies produce, and that they're unable to monetize because of this. And most importantly, and this is my whole point, spend in ways that match your brand beliefs. Choose to support quality digital journalism with your ad dollars. Now, as a woman in tech, I've kind of had to forge my own path to success. But along the way, I found the support of mentors and advocates. And like it or not, what I've learned is that money drives change. So where and how you spend your ad dollars changes our media. By supporting quality publications that are BIPOC and woman-owned and operated, brands fuel more of this great content, creating more diverse voices in our media, and possibly even reversing the direction of this great divide that we've seen, right? And as marketers, you can rise to this challenge. But frankly, talk is cheap. It's about actioning on this. We recently made this easier, allowing you to target properties directly from the Quantcast platform. This is a project that has been near and dear to my heart. We have partnered with Bcode and other publishers directly. Bcode is a private marketplace leader in reaching multicultural audiences and allowing you to align with endemic content. We've built partnerships to enable advertisers to support diversity and inclusion. We are taking real action in this area. So the point is, advertise on sites that specifically target BIPOC audiences and cover the key issues and topics that resonate with the audience. That's going to connect your brand to what people care about, and to quality content at the same time. But the important thing is, let's not, as we carry this forward, let's not make this the fad of the moment, right? This needs to be long-term change in our industry. Our media shapes our perceptions, and diverse voices create diverse viewpoints. And the thing that I love to say all the time, the free press is not free, but that's why your brand dollars can be such a catalyst for change. So please be a part of that change.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Summer. That was really fascinating. And also for sharing how you started out and your early interests. It's really great to get that kind of color from a speaker about, how they got on this journey and where they are today. So thank you for that. I just want to take a question, actually, from someone called Greg in our audience. And Greg wanted to know, is the answer here to avoid all of the issues that we've been having with content, to actually just avoid free content on the internet? Do you think that is part of the answer, that we actually just need to pay for quality editorial? Is that going to be part of the solution?
Actually, I think that's going to create a greater divide, right? So then you're creating a socioeconomic divide. What's the important thing about news and information, in all of history, is that it informs people, right? And, for the people that, can't afford to subscribe to a newspaper and pay for it, they're not going to get access to that, right? And free access to news and information is absolutely critical to society.
Yeah, how do you think when editorial was paid for, so newspapers were paid before the age of digital, do you think that helped prevent the polarization, or do you think that the polarization is down to the models that we have now? What do you think is contributing to the polarization that we see increasingly? Do you think it's the platforms?
I think it's where people are getting their news, right? Because it's so hard. Like my two favorite places are the New York Times and the Guardian, right? And I subscribe to both, right, just to support that journalism. But I have to individually go to those sites or open those apps, and you can see like how, human behavior and wanting things to be easy technology has stepped up and changed that over time. but it's also created bad behaviors. So being able to go to one place like Google News was hugely helpful. But Google kind of took advantage of that and didn't pass that monetization along the way to the content creators. And fast forward years, and now people are actually getting their news from social. And the algorithms are written to keep people in the news feed and reading it and going through it. And the way that you do that is to put content in front of people that is of interest to them, or you think is of interest to them. And it's you don't get that diversification, right? If I open a newspaper or if I go to a newspaper website, I can scan the whole thing and see lots of different news stories. There may be soccer stories on there that I won't read because I'm not a football fan, but I still see it, right? And it might catch my interest. But with social, where tech companies are using machine learning to control what you see, it's that's what creates that kind of divide. I think we need to go back to a place where aggregation is fine, and having that ease of use is great, but don't have algorithms that drive people down a certain path, right?
Yeah, the weaponization of outrage, the economy of outrage is definitely something I think we're going to hopefully talk about more in the coming years, and start to build infrastructures and economies that don't depend on it quite so much. But so thank you so much, Summer, for that very interesting presentation and for joining us today. Thank you very much. Warm round of applause, please, for Summer.